Erik Blauberg, what has been your experience with being a chef in these very high-end restaurants around New York City, even the world,
Yeah,
and the plant-based issue growing and growing?
yeah. Well, it's very important being a chef to be prepared and ready for the customer that has that special request and that the dietary needs or whatever it might be. So I've always had grains and different vegetables on hand to accommodate that need. And there's such a tremendous need for it. Originally, and I've said this, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, that vegan cuisine, I mean, it is a cuisine, it's not a trend. And there's quite a demand for it out there. Matter of fact, when I create menus for different venues, I've been consulting for the last 6 years, since I've left the 21 Club in Manhattan, and when I engineer menus for different venues, I always include a few vegan dishes on the menu, and you'd be surprised the sales of these items surpass the regular items on the menu. It's just so amazing.
And what do you think the reason for that is?
Well, because there's a lot of people that that care about their diets and that are obviously vegetarians and vegans, and it's great food. It's healthy, and you got to be creative. And as I said to you that day at the Javits Center, that chefs need to step up to the plate when a customer has a request for a vegan dish, that you have these ingredients on hand, different grains, and it's really important to not only just throw vegetables on a plate and throw it in a steamer.
Yes,
You got to be creative with
even
it.
vegetarians find that boring.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be creative with it. I've always put together different tasting menus for vegans as well as our regular customers. So if we have a tasting menu of 5 courses, somebody sits down, obviously they're vegan, you got to be able to accommodate that, and you got to step up to the plate. So if you have some great creative food, for the rest of the guests that are sitting at the table, you want to make sure that the vegan food is just as creative as everything else, and they're not left out.
And from a marketing standpoint, it's smart too, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've always been a huge advocate in making sure that taking care of the customer's needs. So you got to be ready for it.
But I think I've heard you say too, that a lot of restaurateurs don't get that if that one person at the table is not satisfied,
Well,
then you lose that tabletop.
absolutely. And you know what? I think that happens even before they sit at the table, Linda, when they make that reservation, and they talk to the restaurant, and they usually announce that they have a vegan in the group, and can you accommodate us? So it starts from the initial phone call to the restaurant that they're able to fulfill that request.
Have you noticed a growing change?
I've always been interested in cooking with plant-based vegetables, and doing different
Fruits and
tasting.
grains.
Yeah, exactly. Different tasting menus. It's important. I've always had a vegetarian menu alongside a seasonal menu, and it's interesting that to see that how much of the vegetarian menus that you sell. So there's quite a need for it.
Well, a good dish is a good dish.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And
I
it all
also,
starts with great ingredients as well. You got to have, it starts with a great product, which is important.
in thinking of, well, actually, I also know that you cook for Chelsea Clinton.
Yes.
And I didn't realize how long she's been a vegetarian
Yes.
and then a vegan.
Yeah, that she has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't remember what you served, I guess. That's too long ago.
I put together. Yeah, I remember when President Clinton was in office. He had actually a tuna dish that I had on that day. The First Lady, Hillary Clinton, she had the Dover sole.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, I remember very well, because not only did I cook for the president, the first lady, and the daughter, I've also served them. So I was right in there with the mix.
Oh,
So it
that's
was a great experience. But yes, I put together a combination of different vegan products for her.
I also know that you're a truffle hunter, and you've been in Italy not too long ago.
Yeah, I was
And
actually
but you've
there.
been to Russia, you've been other places, I think, and even the New York Times went on a trip with you once to truffle hunt.
Yes.
And it's kind of nice to know that they're vegan.
Yes. They're vegan. Definitely. Yeah. Well, actually, I just finished up a trip with the Culinary Institute of America, and we did a trip, 5 regions of Italy, and one of the grand finale of the trip was a great truffle hunt. And I had my friend who's a long time truffle hunter, probably one of the biggest truffle companies in the world. He actually flew in it was great to have him there. There was 20 of us on this particular trip, and he actually came in, and it's not something he does every day.
So for people who only think of truffles as being chocolate,
Yeah.
what is the definition of a truffle?
A truffle is, the simple definition, it's basically an underground mushroom is what it is.
An underground mushroom.
Yeah.
And they're located usually at the base of trees, aren't
Yes, yes, usually chestnut and walnut trees.
they?
And the way it works, the spores, if I could describe a spider net, is basically how the spores work between the trees. And on those spores, the pH of the soil has to be just right, and it's just the air temperature, the humidity. There's so many elements that go into truffle actually being created in all of this.
Yes, and I understand that you have to have dogs or pigs primarily
Yes,
to even know where they are.
absolutely.
And then, is it dogs or pigs that you have to be so careful because they think of it as an aphrodisiac or something and they want to eat them right away?
Yeah, that's the pig.
That's the pig.
It's usually the female pig. That's what they hunt. And they're usually pregnant pigs.
Oh, pregnant as
yes.
well.
So they have the craving
Oh, isn't that
for the
interesting?
truffle. Yes.
Now, people who don't understand when you say underground mushroom, it's not the soft, spongy mushroom that we think of that we buy in the stores, like a shiitake or a button mushroom or a portobello. They're a little bit they're more firm,
Yes, yes.
and they can be white or black.
Yes, they have a winter black truffle, which is the more desirable black truffle. And you can tell the difference when you cut it open. It's actually black inside with white veins going through it. And then they have the summer black truffle, which is a black truffle on the outside, and when you cut it, the inside is actually white with black lines going through it. So
yeah.
it's easy to determine the two, not only by the season, but also if you had them in front of you, you'd be able to
Now, if you
tell
had
the difference.
about let's say a 4-inch, 5-inch, that's a pretty big truffle.
Well, that's a big
they're,
truffle.
They're more like 3 inches, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the ideal size is about a little bit larger than a golf ball. would
Okay.
be.
And that would be about how much generally
Over $100
for
for
one
sure.
truffle?
Yeah,
Yes.
depending on the time of the year. The white truffles are the most expensive and most desirable truffles, and that's usually in the fall and into the early winter months.
And what do they taste like?
And they have a very aromatic, kind of like a garlicky, very aromatic,
Earthy.
earthy flavor to them. They're great.
And you really will only find them in the most elegant restaurants because of the cost.
Because of the cost.
And but anyone viewing this video, they can get the sense of the taste of the truffle with some of the oils that are infused.
Yes,
Have you ever infused oils yourself?
I have truffle oil. What I've done to utilize the truffle, I take the truffle after it's harvested and I'll put it into a light olive oil and let it sit overnight, and then I'll remove it from the oil. If you leave it in too long, it becomes mushy and you lose the truffle. So you take it out, then you have the essence of the truffle. Then you take the truffle, then you can actually place it into a risotto, a dry rice, to dry it off. And that will actually preserve it, and then when you're ready to actually use the truffle, then you also have the rice, which you were keeping it dry. Kind of like, did you ever put rice in a salt shaker?
Oh,
You get
yes, yes, to keep it from being sticky from humidity and
from
all
the
that. Yeah.
humidity. Exactly. It
Uh,
works the same way
oh, that
with
is
the truffle,
fabulous.
but you can cook the risotto after you're finished with the truffle,
And you'll have
and then you'll have a
truffle
scented
risotto.
truffle risotto, and then shave the truffles on top of it. So it's win-win
Yes,
all
that's
the
so
way.
exciting. Well, I love having truffle oil in the refrigerator, and it's amazing. What are some ways you can use it just for the home cook?
Well, it's truffle oil is typically a finishing oil, so you put it on as you're finishing. If I was cooking off some mushrooms with some shallots and some fresh thyme, a little bit of oil, I would finish off with a little bit of truffle oil as I was pulling it off of the fire.
And what about on salads?
It's great on salads as well. If you're using different types of vinegars, I like mixing different vinegars. For instance, I'll take a balsamic vinegar and mix it with a sherry wine vinegar and maybe a champagne vinegar because they all
Oh,
taste a little different, just to make it a little bit interesting, and possibly make a stock out of mushrooms. Take some mushrooms, put it in, cover it with water, and just boil them for several hours and let it reduce down. Add some more water, so you build a really, really strong stock up. And take a little bit of that
ooh.
stock and add that after it cools off. Add that into your vinegar, and then add your little truffle oil to it, and voila!
Oh, voila, that's right.
Talk about
This, what
flavors.
you just
It's amazing.
described is what makes a difference between going into a regular restaurant and going into a like a 4 or 5 star restaurant. It really is those extra touches that you create deep flavor that as soon as somebody puts a spoonful in their mouth, they go, oh.
Yes.
And other times you're eating in a restaurant, you might like the food, but
Hmm.
it doesn't kind of send you somewhere that you say, "Oh, I'm never going to forget this mouthful of food."
Exactly.
And
Yes.
a chef of your caliber is
Thank you.
what makes that all reasonable to do.
Well, it's all about putting love and passion in what you do.
You have offered a recipe in my new book, Virgin Vegan, of vegetable cakes.
Yes.
And when you served them to me, it was interesting for me to see that you made little ones
Hmm.
and put it over, I think, some risotto or some arborio rice. I forget exactly. Um, but you also said, but you could take the same cakes and make it larger and put them in, make a burger.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, that recipe is a very popular recipe in one of the venues that I've consulted with. And I had actually mini Kobe burgers on this particular menu, and I had these vegan
Now,
burgers.
state what mini Kobe
Kobe,
burger.
well, that's a beef burger. So it, but it's interesting to see how the vegan burger compared with the meat, the beef Kobe burger. And the Kobe burger was a mixture of Kobe beef, which comes from Japan, and then also I mixed it with a black Angus beef. And they were very popular at the restaurant for meat eaters. But most nights, the vegan burger would surpass, as far as sales go,
Wow.
it would surpass the Kobe burger.
Yeah, so rush
It's
to the
pretty
burger
amazing.
section in the book
Yes,
so
it's
you
a great
can
recipe. It really
see how to
is.
do it. Yes, and you can double or triple the amount you make so that,
Yes, you can.
you know, there
So,
are a lot of ingredients, but they're not difficult ones. They're not
right.
strange ones, and it's not difficult steps.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It really is. And, as you mentioned, it's great. You can take it, and if you're having a party, you could make smaller portions, and you could actually roll it into a little ball, and then
Oh, have some meatballs
and
too, you
meatballs,
mean?
some vegan
I never
meatballs.
thought of that.
Yeah, you could do that, or you can flatten it out. Well, that's how you make a great shaped burger. You make a meatball first,
Right,
shape, and then you pat it down, and you have the
right.
perfect shaped burger. So I do that with the vegan mix, and then smaller for parties, so they're bite-sized, or you could actually make a larger
Well, I know
burger.
that I think that you mentioned using
Put it in a
panko
bun.
breadcrumbs if you wish,
Yes.
but a lot of people don't know what panko breadcrumbs are. Would you?
Okay. Well, panko breadcrumbs are actually
Panko.
yes, it's a Japanese style breadcrumb. And what is it? It's nothing magical. It's just white bread. That's the way they shave it. It's in larger pieces than than you find in your regular breadcrumbs on the shelf in the grocery store.
Yeah, it
So
has
it's pretty popular
has
these
much
days.
more. Yeah, you can get them in all
It's
supermarkets
interesting.
now.
What I
It-
like about it,
Puffier.
Linda, is that it has the crunch and has a nice texture to it. So if you have
But you
it's,
can use regular
you
breadcrumbs
can
if you want,
absolutely.
and I think you suggest coating in flour also.
Yeah, a little bit of, I use Wonder flour, which is a great flour. It's a very simple flour.
You've worked in really your culinary education came through working with the great chefs of Europe, which has to be an education beyond a culinary education. It had to be just a phenomenal experience to gather that kind of schooling.
Yeah, it was hard knocks, but it was very gratifying, and it was a great honor to be part of all that.
And then at the CIA, though, it's really considered the Harvard of culinary schools,
Yeah,
I guess we
it
can
is,
venture to say.
absolutely. It's one of the best schools in the world.
Yes, and you stayed very connected to it.
Yes, I do.
You do some presentations there, and
Yeah, I'm actually working with a program called Culinary Passport, and I'm hosting trips with the Culinary Institute of America and taking small groups all over the world. Our next trip is coming up shortly here to Spain. We just finished Italy. We have a lot. We have New Zealand, France coming up, south of Italy.
and people can find out about those things by going to.
Yeah, you can either go to my website, erikblauberg.com, or culinarypassport.com. I'll bring you there.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have vegans or vegetarians going on any of those trips?
Absolutely. Absolutely. On our past Italy trip, there was actually 3 vegetarians that were on
Oh,
that trip.
great.
So we called ahead. So everybody was ready for it. It was great. I had
Yeah.
a great time.
Yeah, and so what is your vision for the future?
Just to elaborate on it, and to definitely go in that direction. And you'd be surprised, as a restaurateur or a restaurant consultant, I see that it brings a lot of new customers into the establishment. So, and new customers is obviously more revenue, and it helps you to be more connected with your neighborhood,
Yes.
so to speak.
And as I heard you say once, vegans eat with meat eaters.
Yeah,
So
absolutely,
the
they do.
restaurateur better get used to that idea.
Yes, yes, it's important.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure.